Welcome to the Girlspring Women in the Arts podcast. This project is made possible by the Alabama State Council on the Arts and is a partnership between the Birmingham-based teen girls empowerment platform, Girlspring, and C. Jane Wright, a website and community for women who write. This podcast gives the young women of Girlspring the opportunity to interview women from a wide range of arts fields, including literature, theater, dance, visual arts, and fashion. In this episode, Girlspring Springboarder Eden Stephens chats with Alie B. Gorrie. Alie B is an actor, arts educator, and disability inclusion activist. Through her solo show, Cockeyed Optimist, Alie B shares her experience navigating the professional theater industry and the world with low vision. Eden is an 8th grader at the Altamont School and a proud theater kid. She's been doing musicals since she was 7 and has been in several shows with the Virginia Sanford Theater and Red Mountain Theater in Birmingham. She takes dance and singing lessons too. Because of all her artsy activities, Eden already knew Alie B, but was eager to interview her to hear more of her inspiring story. Let's hear Eden's talk with the one and only Alie B. Gorrie.
Alie B, thank you so much for coming in today. We're so happy to have you. Could you start out by talking a little bit about what you do as an actress, teacher, dancer, and disability inclusion consultant?
Oh my gosh, yes. And thank you for having me. This is so much fun. So, I am an interdisciplinary artist. I teach theater and tap, and I love to direct and choreograph. And in a given week in Birmingham, I am in around 6 different arts organizations and institutions, being able to do everything from teach a tap class to direct a musical. So, no day is the same, and I prefer it that way. And in regards to the disability inclusion piece, I myself am disabled. I was born with a rare eye condition and have low vision as a result. And I spent most of my life navigating the arts as the only kid that had to be an advocate in the space because I was the only kid with a disability that was really vocal about it. There probably were more, but I continued on that path and moved to New York and performed in New York and realized that I was still often the only one with a disability in rooms. And so that led me to really learn and grow with the disabled community and the disabled artist community in New York to train and become an inclusion consultant. So now I get to go into arts organizations and help them be more inclusive so that hopefully there's not just one student with a disability in their training, or there's not just one person with a disability coming to see their shows, but their art space feels welcoming and like a home and a safe haven for disabled people. Because think about it, right?
Yeah.
We go to the theater and we feel like, oh, these actors, or we see a show and they're like, they get me, or that's me up there, that's my story. And we see ourselves. But often disabled people don't have that same experience, right? Sometimes they can't even get into the door of a theater, or they come to a theater and if a disabled person is deaf, there's no shows with an interpreter, right? And so it just felt silly to me because theater is such a universal experience of being able to see and be seen. And I wanted to make sure that folks with disabilities have that opportunity. And not just theater, right? In all of the arts, but also I get to do some of that disability work with businesses and corporations too, which is really fun. So,
Do you feel like as a disability inclusion consultant, you've been able to make the arts more accessible? And if so, how?
yes. So, a couple of examples. I have instituted some great programs here, even in Birmingham. At Red Mountain Theater, for example, we now have sensory inclusive performances that have always existed in a small way, but that program has grown a lot. And then also performances that include audio description, which is for blind and low vision patrons. And that is super important to me, obviously, and ASL interpreted shows, because a lot of times these organizations would inclusive shows maybe once for a season. And with Red Mountain and theaters across the country, I've really worked to ensure that there is at least a performance or more in every single show of their season. Because if you are low vision or deaf, you should be able to buy a season ticket and come to the whole season, not just one show. So those kinds of programs have been really instrumental. And what happens is you often have to deal with folks maybe taking a while to come, because if there's never been ASL, why should a deaf person, or if there's never been audio description, why should a low vision person trust that your organization is really going to be there for them? So a lot of times I have to work with theaters and other arts orgs saying, hey, it might be a slow build because you have to earn this population's trust because they haven't felt like they could come in your doors. Right. So kind of helping organizations along and realizing that, hey, this might be a slow roll, but just watch your subscriber base and your audience base grow given time and relationship with you. Because so much is about relationship.
Yes. Did you always want to be in the arts and be an actress? And what inspired you to do that?
Yes, I have always wanted to be in the arts. And I've seen you on stage for a long time. So I'm sure that you feel that too, right? As from a young age, you knew. I grew up and did nothing but put on shows around the house, sing, dance, write songs. And really, by the time I was 5, my parents were saying, we need to get this kid in some lessons. But no one really teaches a 5-year-old seriously. But they tried. And then I got involved with Summerfest, which is now at Red Mountain Theater, when I was 7 and really never looked back. Theater has always been my first love. And then when I was in maybe 4th or 5th grade, I discovered tap. And tap has been so important to me as a dancer who has low vision because so much of it is about what you hear. And it's really being a tap dancer is about being a musician that knows how to like place their body well in space, but it is being a musician. And so I fell in love with tap in elementary school kind of later. And that's also just a big love of mine. But I even knew when I was in 1st grade, I wrote a little book because I love to write too. And it was called Alie B and Harry Gary Take New York. And Harry Gary was the sheepdog that I wanted, but I never got because I'm deathly allergic. But I knew I wanted to go to New York. I knew I wanted to be on stage from a very young age.
Aw. Is tap your favorite form of dance?
Oh, yes. Yes, yes, yes. I've tried all the others. I still make myself take a ballet class from time to time. I equate it to like eating my vegetables as a dancer.
Yes.
It's not what I want to do, but it's technique and it is also so good for body awareness and conditioning and all of that. But if I go to New York and I go take class, it's going to be multiple tap classes in a row for sure.
Could you talk a little bit about your show, Cockeyed Optimist, and what it was like doing a one-woman show? What did you like less or more about that, and how was it different, just a one-woman show than a full ensemble show?
Yes. Okay. So I love to write and I have kept a journal since February 20th of my 7th grade year. Remember it very specifically because it was a teacher that inspired me. But I've been writing and collecting stories and writing down important moments for that long. And so I knew that I wanted to create a piece of theater that combined artistry and advocacy so that, for example, if I'm going to a theater in North Carolina to train their staff on accessibility, they can come see the show. And then when I give them the training, they're already a little bit ahead because they've heard the stories behind it. Right. And I also just love to tell stories and I love to weave story and song in a way, just like in musicals, right? We sing when we can't speak anymore because it's so powerful. And the fun part about writing a show, especially a cabaret, is you get to extract these songs from different musicals or even pop songs and figure out where they fit in the context of the story you're trying to tell and where they would be most impactful. So I actually wrote the show first and then made a lot of Spotify playlists to try to figure out where to plug and play in terms of the songs. And what's really cool is sometimes you would sing half a song and then you would have a monologue and then you would come in with the other half of the song. And it was just such a fun puzzle for me as an artist. And I love it. And I've been able to tour it around to multiple cities across the country. And it's super special to have that. I love being in an ensemble show. I love the teamwork. I love the collaboration. And yes, there is collaboration in a solo show. You work very closely with your music director. And I had an amazing one. And I've had many. Sometimes when I go to different cities, I'll work with a music director that either I know from that city or I'll bring one with me. It just depends. With the collaborative piece, it's just different and it's far more intimate. It can feel a little lonely at times because it's just you. And just like in theater, right, we have to figure out a way to make it sound like the first time we're telling the story so that it doesn't feel like, oh, this old thing again, right? And luckily, a lot of times when you're telling your story, there are always little tidbits you might add. There's less pressure in cabaret to be word for word perfect, like it would be if you were doing Shakespeare,
Yes.
which is a gift because depending on what kind of week it's had, I might be a little bit more quippy or sarcastic or silly, or maybe something has happened in regards to my own health history, right? Or my own vision issues that might bring a little bit more emotion that I might not have had 2 weeks ago when everything was hunky dory. So it really just depends. But I think everyone who has the desire to write and share pieces of their story should go for it. I also think it's important that, especially, I know a lot of uh, folks your age are going to listen to this podcast, and hopefully more, but no matter what, you are always in control of what parts of your story you want to tell. And it's really cool because I want to write another show because that was only a part of me. You can't just share all of you in one sitting, then you'd have nothing else to do. Like you gotta be smart about how you share and what you share, and also know that that is in your control. And you should never feel like, oh my gosh, I have to just open my soul so much I can't sew it back together. So it's finding that balance.
How long have you been touring the show?
About 2 years.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And I love to bring it to audiences that include folks with disabilities. So the last city I did it in was Well, I actually just did it at the Alice Stevens Center. But before that, in February of this year, I was doing it in Charlotte. And half of the audience were young people with disabilities, and half were their kind of non-disabled mentor peers. And it was a really awesome opportunity, not just for the students with disabilities, but also some of the students' parents were there. And I think sometimes it's cool for parents of kids with disabilities to hear from another person with a disability that's not their kid on maybe how things are perceived. Like I talked about a lot in my show in the beginning, how growing up in the South, I mean, I have a disability. I had disability accommodations all throughout school. And my well intentioned, precious, well meaning Southern parents would never say the word disability. They would say things like, oh, our sweet, precious daughter has this little vision thing, this little issue. And they were saying that because in their minds, disability at the time was seen as a bad word, or it was seen as something that like we don't talk about. But I think being able to share that in those little moments with other parents can sometimes be helpful. So that way their kids don't have to be their educators. Because as a person with a disability, sometimes I want to educate people and sometimes I just want to like go on a run and live my dreams? So it's a really cool way to sort of do some secondhand or education in a way that doesn't feel like you're banging someone over the head with, you must do this, but like, have you considered? Just a
Yeah.
different way to look at things.
What is it like being an actress with low vision? And has there, have you ever felt like it's kind of helped you in some way in acting?
That's a really good question. And it's definitely helped, and it's been a struggle. I think in the ways that it has helped me is I view my disability as something that can add another layer to the characters I play. So let me give you two examples. One time I did Carrie the musical based on the Scary Movie. I
Oh,
don't know
yeah.
if you've ever seen that Scary Movie,
No,
but
I've heard about it though.
like creepy, creepy. But Carrie, that character, has this power of telekinesis where she can move things with her eyes. Well, she doesn't have a vision impairment. That wasn't written in the script. But the fact that I did have one, I don't know, it brought a different sense of like power and like excitement to the character that I don't think was necessarily written into the script. And also, Carrie, she deals with things like being bullied and having really challenging relationships. And when you have a disability, sometimes that's just part of what you go through. So there are certain things that I feel like I could channel some of the frustration that I've even felt in my own disabled world into those intense moments where Carrie is moving things with her. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
it's really cool. Or in a show like Shrek, right?
Yeah.
Where I got to play Fiona. She's not visually impaired or she doesn't have a disability, but she's desperately trying to hide a part of herself. Like she is so uptight for half of the show because she doesn't want her truest self to be seen. And I think any person with a disability who might have a disability that's not as visible or even is slightly visible, there's often, to try to make it in the world, we try to hide it or we try to act like it's not there or we try to push down a part of us. So again, it's just a part of me that just because of my lived experience, I love to be able to bring that to any role I do. And then other times it's been really hard. There were times in New York when I would audition for Broadway shows and I would be called back to dance. And I would tell the choreographer that I needed to stand in the front row. And if you ever said switch lines, I can't do that. And then the choreo, but I know myself and I know I can learn it if I stand right here. And people would say, well, if you can't see, then how can you dance and why are you in here? And it was like, because I was invited to be here. Like, I'm so confused. So there have been moments of helpfulness and there have been moments of like, I'll be at an audition for a Broadway show and the font size will be 12 and I needed a whopping 18 to 24 point font to be able to even have a chance with a script. So, yes, there have been like amazing opportunities that my disability has helped me, or that I've been able to harness my disability to make these opportunities even cooler. And there have been hardships too.
Yeah. Do you feel like you've had an experience in your life that has most shaped who you are as a performer and a person?
Yes. Oh my gosh. I feel like I've had a couple, but I talk about this in my solo show. But as a young person, I took voice with Amy Murphy here in Birmingham. And on February 20th of 2006, that
Wow.
was also the day she taught me to keep a journal. She pulled me aside in a voice lesson because I was getting called back for some bigger roles and I was auditioning for things outside of Birmingham just because I knew I really wanted to do theater even as a young kid. And I was getting turned down because these directors didn't understand how to talk to me or my mom about my vision impairment. They were just like, your eyes look different and we can't cast Annie and Annie who's cross-eyed or looks different. And I was very upset about it. And I was also a 13-year-old girl who didn't want to talk about what made me different. And so she sat me down and she said, Alie B, I know that you have a vision impairment. I know you have low vision. And do you know it? And it's time that we start talking about it and how it relates to your work as an actor, singer, and dancer. And I want to help you learn how to advocate for yourself. Up until that point, my parents had done all the advocating, right? They go to the meetings at school to talk about disability. They take me to the doctor. They do all this. But as a 13-year-old, Amy said, hey, it's time. And if you want to do this professionally and be an artist, you have to learn how to tell people how to support you. You can't just get mad or upset when they don't know how to help. And it was a hard thing. I mean, what 13-year-old wants to hear, I know you're different and you know you're different, right? But also, like, let's learn how to speak up.
Yeah.
I mean, even in a rehearsal as a teenager, I had to learn how to be like, hi, I need my script in a bigger font, or hi, I'm not going to switch lines. And she taught me how to advocate for myself by writing a monologue of all the different accessibility needs I had. So I wrote a script basically. And the cool thing about writing a script, which, by learning scripts, you memorize it and you learn it and you could say the words like while you're washing your hair. Like
Yeah.
yes, they mean something, but you memorize them in a way that it's kind of like just always in the back of your brain and it doesn't have so much deep emotion attached. And so once I started practicing my script over and over, I knew how to advocate for myself in a way that didn't always make me want to cry, because
Yeah.
it felt like, oh, I've rehearsed this. I know this song and dance.
Oh, Miss Amy's the best.
Yeah, pretty awesome.
You also do some directing.
Mhm.
And what is that like? Like, are there pros and cons of being a director?
So there are definitely pros and cons. The pro is that it is such a creative space. It feels like playing in a sandbox. And I always have to make sure I have really good edges around my sandbox because I can get really lost in the like, what if we did this? And what if we did this? And I am an ideas person. And I, as an artist, really need the discipline of like strategy and steps. I could live in the excitement of a show all day long. So the pros are, yes, it's just a space for creativity to bloom. It's so exciting. I love watching because I work with so many young people. I love watching students get it for the first time or that moment from when we're rehearsing and dress rehearsals are just a mess and tech is so scary. And then we get to that opening night and it's like everything clicked. Thank goodness. It always
Yeah.
does somehow. Right. And I love the collaboration. So many people, when you say director, you're not thinking necessarily about how collaborative it is, but it is a team sport. Just like I tell all my students, theater is a team sport. Directing, you are constantly having to talk to your choreographer, your music director, your designers. And when I'm working in community theater spaces, your parent committees and volunteers. It is so much about the team and how can I make sure that everyone's good and everyone has what they need and all the actors feel supported and the stage management team feels supported. So I really love that aspect of theater that it is so collaborative.
Yeah, it's great. What is something that you love about theater, and what do you think makes theater so unique compared to like so many other careers?
Yeah, gosh. Something I love about pursuing theater as a career is that you're always telling a different story. I think in a lot of lines of work, it's like, this is what we do and this is how we do it. And I'm just going to go to my job and do these 5 things every day. And that's how it goes. But when you think about it as an actor or a director or an educator, every new show you do, every new script you pick up, you could be in a scene study class, right? And every new character, it's like a new window into a completely new world and life and way of being in the world. So I love that ability to step into so
Yeah.
many different stories and build empathy that way. I think theater kind of builds that empathy bridge in a way that is so different from other art forms. People can either have what I call a window or a mirror experience, right? You go to the theater or you play a character, and it's either a window into parts of you that maybe you finally feel are seen, or or excuse me, no, it's a mirror. That would be a mirror. Or it's a window into a totally different life experience where you're like, oh, I never thought about it
Yeah.
that way. And so I think that's just so special. And of course, I love the collaboration of it.
Yeah.
You can't do a full, enormous musical by yourself. I mean, you can do a cabaret solo show, but when you're doing a big musical, it takes everyone, and the relationships are so special. I think we as artists are hungry for that kind of relationship
Yeah.
and camaraderie. And I love that aspect too. It is such a community building art form.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a job where like your job is to make other people feel something.
Yes.
Yeah.
And recognize things in themselves. I think as an artist, it's so cool when someone after a show is like, oh my gosh, I discovered a part of me, or you inspired me.
Yeah.
There was one show I did on tour and I didn't think, of course I loved it. I did Seussical for 18 months of my life and
Yeah.
lived, in a bus and hotels and
You were Gertrude, right? Yeah.
yes. And very rarely am I like, oh yeah, Dr. Seuss out here changing the world, right? But this character, she figures out who she is and she steps into her own strength. And even hearing getting letters from like a third grader saying that
Yeah.
Gertrude made me feel like I could be strong one day,
Yeah,
or
it's so sweet.
it's those moments where you're like, oh yes, like we live for that.
Well, if you could give one piece of advice to young actors on getting into the arts, what would it be?
I would say, and this is pretty counter to the advice I received, but when I was growing up, I heard if you can do anything else besides a career in the arts, do that because it's too hard.
Yeah.
And it was a very harsh thing to hear. And I hope through this interview and through us chatting, folks can understand that your career in the arts can be so diverse and rich. And as an artist, you are not a one trick pony. You can do so much and have so much impact, not just on audiences in theaters, but in your community, using your voice to stand up and tell stories about things you care about. So I think I would tell young artists to stay open and to stay curious about ways they can use their art and where their art can take them. There is no one path, and the path continues to open as long as you stay open.
Yeah. Gotta keep on going.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it.
That's all she wrote.
Yeah.
It's been so fun talking to you. I've loved this time.
Thank you so much for coming.